Hi guys, welcome to today's practical demonstration. As part of today's demonstration, I'm going to be showing you how to make a sweet scone. The aim of the demonstration is to revisit some of the work that you've done in lesson time, so some of the theory work that you've done, but also to extend your learning a little bit, to look at some practical skills as well. Okay, so to start off with, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the practical that we're doing today. So I'm going to tell you about the equipment and the ingredients that you need. It might be that you use today's practical demonstration to cook along, and that'd be absolutely fantastic if you do that. But if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you ask for permission from people at home and you are really safe when you're doing it, so you follow all the hygiene and safety rules and regulations that we've looked at as part of our theory lessons within school. If you don't want to take part in the cook along practical, then that's absolutely fine also, and there will be a set of questions that are linked with today's practical for you to have a go at doing. Whichever one you do, hopefully you'll enjoy today's demonstration and you'll learn a little bit about some of the practical skills that we do within our food technology lessons. So to start off with then, we need to make sure that we are hygienic when we're doing any kind of practical work. So I've got my hair tied back, I've washed my hands, I've taken jewellery off, and I've not got any nail varnish or anything like that on. I've also made sure that my work area is wiped down. So I've made sure that I'm as safe and hygienic as I possibly can. What I've also done is I have set up my work area already, so I've made sure that I'm really organised by getting all of my equipment out and getting all of the ingredients out, that I need out for today's practical. That'll just mean that it's a little bit easier for me to get on with the practical that I'm doing today. It means that I've not got to be going around looking for the ingredients and the equipment. When you do prepare things prior to a practical, it's called mise en place, which means basically to get prepared and to put everything in place in preparation for that practical. The other thing that I've done is I have preheated my oven. So I've turned my oven on to 220 degrees C, which is gas mark 7. You might need to ask somebody at home to help you do that if you're not quite sure how to use the oven. So it might be that you're asking them to preheat the oven for you. If you are using the oven, and I'll remind you of this a little bit later on, please make sure you are using oven gloves for everything. So whether that's moving shelves around or putting things in or taking them out of the oven, it is essential that you are using oven gloves to make sure that you're nice and safe. Okay, so now we've got those things out of the way, we're just going to get started with the practical, and I'm going to talk you through the ingredients that we need for today's recipe. So we need some self-raising flour, we need sugar because I'm doing some sweet scones, we need baking powder, and we need some margarine. On recipes for scones and for anything that uses this rubbing in technique that we're going to use today, often asks you to use a hard or a block fat. So that might be a butter or a hard margarine. If it's butter or hard margarine, it tends to come in a paper, so wrapped up in a block. Unfortunately, I've not got any of that today, and you might not have got it at home, so I'm just going to use some normal soft margarine. It will still work, but we just have to be more careful when we're rubbing in, because what we don't want to do is to make it go sticky. What I've done is I've made sure that I've left the margarine in the fridge right until we need it, so that it doesn't start to melt, etc. So I'm just going to get it out now. Okay, so I've got my soft margarine out now, and it'll be nice and cool and keep it sort of as solid as possible. The first thing that I need to do then is I'm going to start weighing out my ingredients. You might not have got weighing scales at home, so if you haven't, we'll talk about how we can weigh out our ingredients using different spoons. If you are using weighing scales, I'll talk to you about that as well. Okay, so I'll just get myself sorted with the things that I need. Firstly, if you've not got weighing scales, you've probably got some spoons. So you might have got a tablespoon, which is the biggest spoon, and that's approximately 15 grams. So if you're having a spoonful of flour, then that'd be 15 grams. If you've got a dessert spoon, that's approximately 10 grams. And if you've got a teaspoon, then that's around 5 grams. So if you've not got weighing scales and you want to do this recipe, you are able to do it using the different spoons. If, however, you have got weighing scales, then you can use those. And again, in order for your baked product to be accurate, you've got to use your weighing scales as accurately as possible. So whatever you are weighing out into or onto, you need to place on your weighing scale. You're going to turn it on, and then you're going to make sure that the scale is on 0 so that it is not weighing the bowl, okay? The other thing that you need to make sure is that you have got the weighing scale on the correct sort of unit of measurement. So you need it on grams. So you need to check that you've got a little G on the weighing scale if that's what you're using. Okay, so I've done that, and I need 225 grams of self-raising flour. So I'm going to weigh that into my small bowl now. Like I said, if you've not got weighing scales, you can be counting that out with the spoons. Okay, say 225 grams of self-raising flour. If you've not got self-raising flour, you can actually use plain flour and baking powder. So for every 100 grams of plain flour, if you put in a teaspoon of baking powder, that will act as your raising agent. Okay, so that's in there. Got that right? Oh no, I've got a little bit too much in. So if you've got a little bit too much in, you can take it out. I'll just pop that back in there. That's it. So as well as the flour, what I'm going to add in is an extra raising agent, because in self-raising flour there's some baking powder added in already, and that is a chemical raising agent. I want my scones to rise as much as they possibly can do, so I'm going to add in a little bit more baking powder. So I'm just going to add a teaspoon of baking powder in. If you've not got any baking powder and you're using self-raising flour, it will work just as well without any, okay? So that's the first of the 2 ingredients that I've got measured out. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to sieve that into my large bowl. Again, if you've not got a sieve, then don't worry about it. You can just pop the ingredients straight into the bowl that you are going to be using. The reason that I'm sieving is to add in a little bit extra air, because when you sieve, you are trapping air as it falls through the sieve into your bowl, and what that does is it makes your scones rise a little bit more. So we've already said that I've got self-raising flour in there, which is a chemical raising agent. I've got baking powder in there that's also a chemical raising agent, and now I am adding a mechanical or a physical raising agent because I'm sieving, and the action of sieving adds in more air. So as the flour falls into the bowl, it traps little particles of air, and that helps it to rise a little bit more when the mixture or dough goes into the oven. Okay, so nearly sieved all of the flour in now. Once the flour's in, I'm then going to add in the margarine. But we could replace the white flour that we've got there with wholemeal flour. And if we did that, we would be increasing the amount of fibre in the recipe. And what fibre does is it helps with a healthy digestive system. So it helps all of the waste products in your body to move effectively through your digestive system and back out the other side. So it means that you're able to go to the toilet okay. So I'm just going to move these out of the way now because I don't need these again. And I am going to weigh my margarine into my bowl now. So again, I want my weighing scales. And I'm going to place my large bowl onto here, and I'm going to make sure again it is on 0 and on grams, and I am weighing in 50 grams of margarine, okay? So I'm going to get a little bit and measure that in. Hopefully I'll have got a similar or the right amount going in. Right, so I've got 50 grams in there. And now I'm going to use my knife just to chop that margarine up. The reason that I'm doing this is so it's easier for me to do this technique known as rubbing in, okay? So I'm chopping it into smaller pieces so it's less likely to go sticky when I rub it in. I'm also just coating the margarine in the flour again so it's less likely to go sticky when I'm rubbing in. This technique of rubbing in is when you use your fingertips and thumbs and you lift, rub and squeeze the flour and margarine together. And the aim of this is to have each little bit of margarine and flour combined together. What you are looking for is what is known as a breadcrumb-like texture, okay? So this will take quite a while because you've got to do it really slowly so that you don't end up melting the margarine. Because if you think about the process of rubbing your fingertips and thumbs together, that creates heat, okay? So you've got to be doing that slowly so it doesn't create too much heat and therefore doesn't melt your margarine. So far in my bowl then, the functions of the ingredients that I've got in there are that the flour creates the structure to make the scone, but the fact that it's got a raising agent in it also helps it to rise. And then the margarine that I've added in helps to create what is known as a short and crumbly texture. So it improves the texture or the mouthfeel of the product. What it also does is it improves the keeping quality, right, or the shelf life, so it basically makes it last a little bit longer. If we think about the Eat Well guide that we've looked at in the past, because this recipe is mainly made out of carbohydrates, then if we were trying to fit it into sections within the Eat Well guide, then obviously the flour fits into the yellow section, which is starchy carbohydrates. However, because it's a baked product like a biscuit or a cake, they don't tend to be on the Eat Well guide. If you remember, they go into the corner just off of the Eat Well guide to remind us that those kind of products should be eaten less regularly, so less often and in smaller quantities. Right, so I have rubbed in the flour and margarine so that you can hardly see any lumps anymore. So a way to be able to check to see if it's rubbed in effectively is if you shake your bowl, any big lumps will come to the top and then you can rub those in. At this stage, what you might want to do is you might want to wash your hands so that you're not getting flour everywhere. The next job is going to be to add the flavourings into our scone. I've said that I'm making a sweet scone today, so that means that I need to add sugar into it. But you can make savoury scones. And obviously if it's a savoury scone, you're not going to add sugar into it because the term savoury means not sweet. So the kind of flavourings that you'd be putting into a savoury product include ingredients that contain salt or herbs and spices and those kind of things. So the kind of ingredients that you'd have as a starter or a main meal rather than a dessert. But I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So I'm going to be adding some sugar in here, and the amount of sugar that we need is 25 grams. So it's not a massive amount of sugar, which is why a scone is one of the better baked products for us, because it doesn't contain a massive amount of fat and it doesn't contain lots of sugar. And actually we can add in things like dried fruit, which contribute towards part of our 5 a day, which again helps us with the healthy eating guidelines that we've looked at in the past. So I'm adding in 25 grams of sugar. So again, just gone a little bit over, so I'm just going to scoop a little bit out and pop that into my bag. There we go. So I've got my sugar in there now that I can just stir in. So it's evenly distributed. The sugar that I'm using is caster sugar, but for this it doesn't really matter what type of sugar it is. It can be granulated sugar like you put in your tea, or it could be brown sugar. They will all work. The next thing that I'm going to add in is my dried fruit, or my sultanas. Again, I need to zero it, and I'm going to add in 50 grams of dried fruit. By adding dried fruit, I am adding in part of my 5 a day. So when you looked at the Eat Well guide, you noticed that there were 2 sections at the top of the Eat Well guide that were the largest 2 sections. And those 2 sections were starchy carbohydrates, which was the bit that was yellow, and then fruit and vegetables, which is the bit that is green. The advice is that we have 5 portions, or at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables per day. Dried fruit contributes towards that, as do things like tinned fruit and vegetables and frozen fruit and vegetables, so it doesn't always have to be fresh fruit and vegetables that contribute. Dried fruit also gives us fibre, like we talked about with wholemeal flour, so that's another really good way of getting different nutrients into our diet. So I've got the raisins in there now, and I'm going to stir those round. Other examples of flavourings that could go into either sweet or savoury products include ingredients like, if we're doing a sweet scone, things like different chocolates. So you could have dark chocolate and orange, you could have milk chocolate, you could have white chocolate and raspberry, you could have some grated fruit like pears or apples, and you could put flavourings in such as ginger in with the pear, and you might have cinnamon in with the apple. So lots and lots of different flavourings that you can put in. If you're doing a savoury scone, then the traditional savoury scone is a cheese scone, but you could also put herbs in there, spices. You could even try to do sort of a flavour that links to a particular cuisine. So scones are traditionally British cuisine, but if you wanted it to be Indian cuisine, you could put curry flavours in there, or if you wanted it to be influenced by the Italian cuisine, you could put things like sun-dried tomatoes and cheese in there, so it's a little bit like a pizza. So lots of different ingredients that could go into these. You can even make scones that are sort of breakfast-based scones, and you could put oats and nuts and dried fruit in, so it's a little bit like a cereal bar. Or you could even go for little bits of things like bacon and sausage, and you could have like an English cooked breakfast scone. So loads and loads of different ways in which you can change this basic recipe. So we've got all the dry ingredients in there, and what we need to do now is have a go at binding or sticking this together. And there are a couple of ingredients again that you can use for that. So you can use eggs, or you can use milk, or you can use a combination of those 2. You can use cream if you want it to be really rich, or you could use yoghurt. So lots of different ways in which this can be stuck together. I'm going to use egg and milk because it does what is known as enrich the dough. So it basically adds in extra nutrients to the recipe. So I'm going to add 1 egg and then some milk to make up the liquid. So I'm just cracking the egg on the side of my jug, and I'm just going to gently beat it with a fork so that it's just all broken up. Right, since talking about the jobs of the ingredients, I've added in sugar. So the job of the sugar is basically to sweeten the product, and then the job of the raisins is to add extra nutrients but also to add flavour. The job of the egg is going to be to bind or stick the product together, and it's also going to add extra nutrients. So it's adding vitamin A and vitamin D, which are fat soluble vitamins, and it's also adding protein. The job of vitamin A in the body is to help with the formation of something called visual purple, which is in the retina, and it helps you to see in dim light. The job of vitamin D is to help with the absorption of calcium, and that helps to create strong bones and teeth. And then the job of protein is for growth and repair of all cells within the body. We're going to add the milk into this now, just so that it makes it up to round about 1/4 of a pint of liquid, which is about 150 millilitres. Again, don't worry if you've got a measuring jug, you can just add this gradually and just see how much it needs to stick it together. So you don't have to have weighed this out either. So I've just quickly combined that. And now I'm going to start adding this gradually to stick it together. So like I said, don't add it all at once because it will become too sticky and it will be too difficult for you to handle it. So make a well in the centre of your ingredients and you're just going to gradually add this in. So using your knife, bring the ingredients together, and by using your knife you can push these ingredients together to squeeze out sort of any of the excess liquid and therefore help to stick it together a little bit. Right, traditionally these are served with cream and jam and those kind of things, and that was seen in traditional British afternoon teas. But you can serve them just with some margarine or butter, or you can even have them plain. Obviously, the more cream and butter and things that you put onto them, the sort of more unhealthy they become. Right, so what you're looking for is for all of this to stick together in a handleable dough. So what you need to be able to do is gently bring it all together so it sticks together. What you don't want is, you don't want it to be too crumbly, but you also don't want it to be too sticky, because it will make it a little bit difficult for you to handle. Right, so you should be able to bring it together in a ball of dough and you can pop it on your side at that stage. Don't throw this liquid away because you're going to need that to brush or glaze the top of your scones. So you can keep that, and then I'll put this to one side as well, ready to wash up. If your mixture is a little bit sticky, what you can do is just pop a little bit of flour onto your work surface, and that will make it a little bit easier for you to handle. So you gently just knead it to bring it together. You don't need to work it lots because it's not bread. If you work it lots, you will overhandle it and you will make your scones quite tough. So once you've brought it all together, you're just going to use the palm of your hand just to press this out, right? And what you're looking for is for a thickness that's sort of the same thickness as the side of the knife, right? So you're just pressing it out like that until you get it to that kind of thickness. If you've not got any cutters, and actually I don't know what I've done with my cutter, if you've not got any cutters, then what you can do is you can use your knife, and if you cut down and across, you get sort of 4 triangles, and then if you cut through those again, you'll get 8 triangles, and you can put those onto a baking tray to cook them. And actually, that means that there is no waste with the scone dough, and you end up with scones that look exactly the same and all rise exactly the same because they've not been worked again and they've not been repressed out. If, however, you want to use a cutter, then you can use a cutter and you can press out the excess dough. If you've seen in supermarkets, very often the scones are square or in a sort of hexagon shape, and the reason for that is those shapes do what is known as tessellate, which means that they all fit together so that there isn't any waste with those either. Okay, I'll just have a quick look to see if I've got my scone cutter. If I have, I will use that. Let's have a quick look. Oh, it's here. Yes, I have, it's there. I'll just dry my hands. So, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut out the scones. When you're cooking these, you need to put them onto some kind of oven-proof tray. What I've done is I've got a tray with some greaseproof paper on to stop it from sticking. If you've not got greaseproof paper, you can put a little bit of margarine or a little bit of oil onto the tray, and that will stop it from sticking. And then you're just going to place your scones onto the tray. And I'll show you those again in a minute. So I'm just cutting them out and placing them on. I've got some spare mixture now, so I will just bring that back together, and what I'm doing is I'm just layering it up rather than screwing it up, because that will help to keep the dough sort of as formed in the same way as it was when I started to cook as possible. So I'm just pressing it out again, making sure that it's not too thin, and then I can use my cutter again. Okay, so I'm just taking that bit off, and then might be able to get one more there if I just press it a little bit more. Yeah. And then I'll use the final bit to bring it together to make one more scone. Right, so this one's slightly bigger than the others, so it won't be quite as uniform. Once you've got, and I'll just move that out of the way, all of your scones on your tray like that, what you're then going to do is you're just going to brush them with the spare egg and milk mixture that you've got. If you've not got a brush, then you can just put a little bit of the mixture onto a spoon, and then you can just spread it on or drizzle it on that way, and it does the same thing. All you're doing by brushing or glazing these is making sure that they will be nice and golden brown. And the reason that they will become golden brown is because of the caramelisation of the milk. Because milk contains a sugar called lactose. And lactose is a sugar, so it caramelises when heated up. Some people are intolerant to lactose, so that means that they can't have milk from a dairy source. So if somebody was lactose intolerant, rather than using milk from a cow, then you might use almond milk or coconut milk or soya milk or lactose-free milk. So there's lots and lots of alternatives that you can use for that. And again, that would have been something that you looked at as part of the Eat Well guide, because if you remember the blue section, which is dairy products, it does say dairy and alternatives, and those are the kind of alternatives that you'd be thinking about. So once you've completed that, they're going to go into your preheated oven for about 10 minutes. They might take slightly longer depending on how big your scones are, or slightly less depending on how small they are. As I said at the start of it, it is really important that you make sure that you have got oven gloves on when you're putting them into the oven, but also when you're taking them out. It might be that you want to ask somebody to help you to do that if you've not used the oven before. Okay, so I'll pop my oven gloves on, and these are going to go into the oven. Right, so here we go. I've got my Christmas oven gloves still. They're going in. And like I said, they will take about 10 minutes. What we're looking for is for your scones to have risen and for them to feel firm to the touch and be nice and golden brown. Okay, when they get to that stage, you can take them out. So here are a few I made earlier, so I'll just show you. Okay, so that's sort of what you're looking for. So a nice golden brown, well-risen scone, and like I said, you can serve them with jam, cream, or just butter. If it's a well-risen scone, what you will get is what is known as a natural break. So you can just see there that the scone has started to split itself. So what you can do then is you can twist the scone and it opens up in half, or it's got a natural breaking point for you to be able to put your knife in to break it in half, to then put your butter and jam, etc. onto it. So that's what you're looking for a really good scone. If you do decide to do today's practical, then it'd be fantastic to see some pictures of the scones that you've made. If you are going to do that, if you just send your pictures to your technology teacher, and we can have a look at your brilliant work. Okay?